First and foremost is the belief system, right? The chief evangelist has to have a belief, or he has to have a
Hello and welcome everyone to the next episode of the Analytics India Magazine podcast, Simulated Reality. Today we have with us Satish Grampurohit. He is the co-founder and chief evangelist at CogniQuest. Satish, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Kashyap. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast.
Great, fantastic. So, evangelism, right? I think today we are going to discuss, since Satish is the chief evangelist, and the term tech evangelist or business evangelist is something that we have all come across, especially on LinkedIn. I've always wondered what this role exactly entails, right? Because it's somewhere between marketing, business development. I don't know what exactly it is, and I wanted to kind of learn more about it. What does, I mean, I googled yesterday, but what does the role or the word evangelist mean? And not in the context of tech or business, right? Like we can maybe start from there, and then maybe you can help us explain how it got imbibed into the entire tech industry.
Sure. So, evangelist, I have been using this word evangelist for myself, describing myself for long. And I had always thought it's about spreading positivity, talking nicely about a product or an idea, etc. And yesterday, when I was preparing for this, I did Google and I found that it's a Greek word. It originates from Greek word, and the actual meaning is good news or spreading good news, right? So, but actually, evangelism is all about creating or promoting an idea or a solution or a product at the base of it.
So it's about creating product.
It's about promoting a product.
Promoting a
it's
product.
about
Okay.
promoting a product. It's about being a brand ambassador for the product. It's about championing a cause. It's all about putting a product in the right spotlight in some ways.
Okay. But then how is that exactly different from, let's say, a person working in marketing, right? Like,
Yes.
or someone working in business development, because they
Yeah.
are essentially going out talking about how this product is and how
Correct.
it is.
Yeah. So there are a few key differences between a salesperson or a business development manager and a chief evangelist, right? So salesperson or a business development manager have a specific target of achieving a growth, right? So they go after a customer, and their whole objective is to convince a customer and make a sale or a transaction happen, right? So when it comes to a chief evangelist or the evangelist, the whole idea here is about creating a likability or creating a positive a view about a product. It's about making a person understand what the product is about, and there is also an empathy involved in this. It is not about blindly going and selling a product to anybody, right? It's all about making sure that the product or the solution or the idea is relevant to the target audience, right? And it's about being a brand ambassador, and it's not just about going and making sure that there is a sale or a transaction or the revenue monetization. It's all about making sure that the product gets the right attention, product gets the right audience, and then the sale is a side effect of what a chief evangelist does.
Yeah, but then it becomes more of a strategic role
Yes.
in a lot of sense. But the idea is that even if it is a strategic role, at every designation, every position, there are some kind of ROIs or set KPIs that
Right.
companies are set to achieve, right? Even if
Yeah.
you take the head of sales, while his or hers uh, portfolio might be more strategic in terms of
Correct.
this thing, they have a target to
Right.
achieve.
Right.
What is that in terms of a chief evangelist, right? How do you measure success, or how do you essentially measure that the chief evangelist is doing a good job, or how do you hire a good chief evangelist in
Yeah.
the first sense?
Yeah. So there are no set KPIs for the chief evangelist as such. It is more about there are softer KPIs, not the hard KPIs, right? It's some of the KPIs or some of the ways in which effectiveness of a chief evangelist is measured is by way of what is the brand awareness of a product, right? The second could be how easy it is for the salesperson or the business development manager to go and convince a customer to make a sale happen. third is about the brand recall. When somebody talks about an idea or a solution or a product, what is the brand recall? Is there a positive recall? Is there a negative recall, etc., right? So these are all some ways in which the chief evangelist's effectiveness gets measured, right? So in terms of how do you go about choosing a chief evangelist? See, first and foremost is the belief system, right? The chief evangelist has to have a belief, or he has to have a conviction as strong, if not better, than the founders of the idea, right? So the chief evangelist can actually go around and talk about the product or the idea or the solution as passionately as the founder of the idea or the product itself. That is one basic thing. The second thing is about how can the chief evangelist convey a complex message in a simple way for the audience. Typically, a chief evangelist is involved where the sale of a product is not easy, right? Either the concept is abstract, or the market is cluttered with too many players, or there is no market itself in many cases, where you have to go and create a market for the product, right? Yeah. So that's where typically the chief evangelist comes into play, and they go about helping position the product or the idea to the right audience.
Some of the KPIs that you mentioned, right, in terms of brand recall and this thing, these are essentially harder KPIs for marketing professionals, right? Then how are it different for a chief evangelist, and in the sense that what is the kind of different value add that a chief or like an evangelist brings rather than market? Because I mean, I want to help our audience understand when does it make sense to invest in an evangelist, which means going a step further than a person who is just a marketing professional or a business development professional.
Yeah.
So when should companies kind of do this? Also, my follow-up question to that is, does the evangelist have to be within the company, or can they be evangelists? Because essentially they are a promoter, or basically they are people who have goodwill about a product, right? Yes. So then do they have to be, and then how do you kind of create these evangelists within the market?
Correct. So see, one simple way to look at is most of the founders or the CEOs of the companies are chief evangelists, even though they don't have the tag in official tag, right? So they are the ones who go about promoting the company or the product or the idea or the solution. But what happens is, in many cases, it is not necessary that the CEO or the founder may have the access to the customers, or may have the presence, or may have the reputation or the trust that the target customers may need, right? So in such cases, it is good to have a chief evangelist who kind of can bridges the gap between the company and the target audience, right? So it's more about amplifying the product value proposition in a way that kind of gets easily consumed by the market, right? So if the profile of the CEO or the founder is something where one is the profile of the CEO and the founder, secondly, it's also about the timing, right? So if the CEO or the founder is more focused internally and trying to build the product and trying to kind of create the roadmap, it may be unfair to expect the same person to also be active in the market and do the required promotion or branding or championing the cause, right? There it is easy, or it is better for the company to double up with a chief evangelist who has, as I was saying, the same level of conviction as the founder and has a market standing, or at least has a reputation of being accepted by the target audience.
Okay,
right?
so not every company kind of has a need for it, but essentially if
yes.
there is some kind of a gap or this thing, then you probably...
So in fact, the first instance of chief evangelist in the business was when Guy Kawasaki was hired as a chief evangelist by Apple, right? Even though Steve Jobs himself was the biggest persona in the market, he hired Guy Kawasaki, and Guy Kawasaki has in some ways, right, it's not a very direct way of marketing. You wouldn't even have heard about him so well, so much as such, right? But he has been the brand promotion lead, or he has been the champion of Apple products right from the day Steve Jobs started Macintosh
Yeah,
range of
it's funny
products.
why Steve Jobs or a computer would need an evangelist, but
Right.
then irrespective, he thought that it is important
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
still hired, which is nice. In terms of some of the role exactly, right? And
Yeah.
you just mentioned about the history, Guy Kawasaki being hired at Apple. When did this role came into being, right?
Yeah.
Was Guy Kawasaki the first probably, and then kind
Yes.
of these kind of things happened? And how has this role kind of evolved over a period of time? What exactly does a chief evangelist do? When you, for example, get up and you have to start your day, what does your day look like? Do
Yeah.
you set up meetings? Do you meet up? So what all includes? And so like a professional or an associate may have a deliverable at the end of the day.
Right.
What are your deliverables like? So just
Correct.
if you can walk us through the role
Yeah.
and its history.
Yeah. So the history, as I was saying, it all started when Apple hired Guy Kawasaki as the chief evangelist. I think, to my knowledge, he was the first one who was officially given a title of a chief evangelist. Right. Over the years, if you see, most of the tech companies which have very complex products, or the products or the offerings which are new, where there is a market creation, or there is a resistance or friction to adopt, those are the companies who have hired chief evangelists. Chief evangelist is not a very common role. It's very strategic, as you rightly said. Very few companies decide to go with the title of a chief evangelist. This is on top of their sales and marketing and the branding efforts, right? So over the years, there are many companies who have had chief evangelists. There are companies, say Canva, Guy Kawasaki, again, if you take his example, he has been a chief evangelist of two very popular brands, one Apple anyways, and the other is Canva, right? Canva, he is a chief evangelist. So you wouldn't even know that he is a chief evangelist, right? So he is the one who has actually, in fact, his story about how he became a chief evangelist is also very interesting. The media person used to use Canva product apparently, and when Canva figured out that Guy Kawasaki uses Canva products, they reached out to him to become their chief evangelist, and he didn't know that his team is using Canva. So he talked to them, and then he got a very positive feedback, and then he realized that this product is going to democratize this whole creative industry, and making people more empowered, right? So he believed in the cause, and then he went about becoming the chief evangelist for Canva.
Yeah, it's funny how you say that they are not well known. These chief evangelists are not. But shouldn't it be the other way around? Like, I mean, they should be these should be people who everybody knows. Like essentially, plus when it comes to the likes of Canva and Apple, especially it's a B2C product, right? So in that case, probably maybe I do understand, but especially in a B2B market, you are being the evangelist, so you should be the face of it,
Absolutely.
right? Or
Yeah.
does it
No, no,
differ
I
between
think,
the two?
no, I think that's a good question. I didn't mean to say that they are not well known. What I meant is, in general public, they may not be a well known figure, right? But in the target audience, they are the celebrities. They are the people who people
Okay.
trust, people believe in what they say, and people follow them, right? In the Sugai Kawasaki, again, taking his example, he is a very accomplished author. He is a person who conducts a lot of podcasts. There is a big fan following for him.
Okay,
And
okay.
the people who are in that industry will regard him very highly, right? What I was just saying is, there is a difference between taking a Hollywood actor or a Bollywood actor as a celebrity and
Yeah.
making them
Or
as
a
a
Steve
brand,
Jobs.
Steve
No
Jobs
matter.
as a celebrity, and then making them the brand champions, versus these are the typical high profile users of a product in some ways, right? They would have gone through the path of using that product themselves, or in some ways they believe that that product or the idea is really useful, right?
Yeah.
That is what I meant. They're practitioners in some ways.
Yeah, and I don't think we visited the question as to whether outsiders can be. So, for example, you mentioned that Guy Kawasaki was hired as a chief evangelist for Apple, but when it came to Canva, he saw it and then he became an evangelist. I don't know if he was hired into Canva.
They invited him to become a chief evangelist.
But then can somebody outside the company can be an evangelist, or can evangelism be outsourced to other companies?
So it's a very interesting question actually. So as I was saying, the chief evangelist has to have the same belief or a belief stronger than the founders in the idea and the problem that they're solving, right? So typically that happens only when the person is within the system, right?
But money can be a good motivator.
It's not just money, it's about, see, you cannot, that's where I was trying to draw a line between taking a celebrity as a brand ambassador versus a chief evangelist, right? So there are certain attributes of a chief evangelist. One, it's a standing in the market. Second, there is a strong belief. Third, there is a empathy. The person has to have empathy to the customers as well as the product. And fourth, there is a need, or there is a value add that the chief evangelist brings in terms of simplifying a complex product in terms of accepting, right? So these things are easy if the person is within the system. And the second thing is, it's not a one-way thing. It's not just that the person is outside and completely disconnected from the company or the product. There is a strong ownership or involvement of the individual in the company or the product itself. So there is a lot of feedback that goes back to the company, right? In my case, for example, although my whole role appears to be just about talking about the product and convincing others, I do a lot of work doubling up with every department in my startup, right? With the CEO, I kind of do the whole strategy. With the product head, I do the whole product roadmap, and with the rest of the team, I kind of look at how we can build point solutions so that it becomes better consumed by the customers, etc. Right? So that way, it's better to have the chief evangelist being part of the company, but there are cases where these people have been hired. Right?
Okay.
But so they're mostly either the consultants or the employees. So I haven't come across a scenario where these are outsourced as such as of now, but I think, maybe that may become.
I think there are two takeaways from this, and one is that a chief you don't work a career to become a chief evangelist.
Yes.
And secondly, I think that role comes naturally for a company. Like it's something that is somebody that is not hired for or this thing.
Absolutely.
But then this thing, and they are essentially the kind of role is formed within the company if there is some kind of a requirement in terms of friction for understanding or adoption of the product and this thing.
Absolutely. Yeah? So it's not that you kind of work towards becoming a chief evangelist. It's a side effect of how you have built your profile, what you have done in the market, right? And then typically, just like there is a product market fit in the marketing jargon, I keep saying there is a person and the audience fit in this case of choosing you cannot pick up any person and make them. In fact, Guy Kawasaki says, even if Bill Gates had asked me to come and become a chief evangelist of Microsoft, I would have said no, because I firmly believe in Apple, but not in the Microsoft ecosystem, right? So that kind of value system also is there. It's not just an opportunity where you just take up because you have a fan following or a celebrity and just go after blindly doing it.
Yeah. And my final question to you is, in terms of some of the technical expertise, how much, because you are this thing in an AI or technical field, you are an evangelist of a tech product or services, how much of expertise do you need, and what is it that on a day-to-day basis that you have to do to kind of enable that, enable your role?
So it's not just the tech expertise, it's what I would say is the expertise in what the person is representing, right? So if it is a technology solution, then the person has to have a full understanding of the technology solution. If it is a end customer solution, then the chief evangelist should have a very good understanding of what is it that they are trying to offer to the end customers. So it's all about imbibing the whole product or the idea of the solution, and especially I have seen that a chief evangelist is relevant in the tech space largely, and it's very good to have a good understanding of the technology underneath, so that you have a conviction to go and talk about it.
On that note, thank you so much for Satish for coming here and helping us get an insight into what the role of an evangelist is in the tech world.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here. I enjoyed the questions that you posed. Thank you.